My granddaughter looked at me across the kitchen table and said, "Grandpa, Tara has been nothing but kind to you. Maybe it's time we talk to your doctor again." I had just told her that $40 was missing from the tin on my dresser for the third week in a row. "You're right," I said. "Let's talk to the doctor. Let's talk to a few people, actually." She had no idea I already had. My name is Harold Whitmore. Everyone calls me Hal. I'm 81, and for 35 years before I retired, I investigated insurance fraud for a living, mostly workers' compensation claims, the kind where someone claims a bad back and then gets photographed carrying a canoe over their head. My family thinks I pushed papers at an insurance office. That's the story I let them believe, because it was easier than explaining that I spent 3.5 decades learning exactly how people lie and exactly what they look like when they think no one's watching. After my hip surgery last year, my granddaughter Ellie arranged a home health aide through an agency, a woman named Tara, mid-30s, always smiling, always calling me sweetheart in front of my family. In front of my family, Tara was patient and warm. Alone with me, she was a different woman entirely, sharp-voiced, rough when helping me up, and increasingly careless about where my wallet ended up at the end of the day. I mentioned it once. Ellie's response was gentle, and it still cut deeper than anything cruel could have. "Grandpa, are you sure you didn't just misplace it? You've been more forgetful lately." I hadn't been forgetful a day in my life, but I understood immediately what was happening. Tara had been quietly, patiently building a story about me for weeks, small comments to my daughter about me seeming confused, a suggestion that I'd wandered one afternoon when I hadn't left my chair. She wasn't just stealing $40 a week, she was laying groundwork in case I ever said something she couldn't afford for anyone to believe. 2 weeks later, my blood pressure medication came up 11 pills short, right before a doctor's appointment Tara had scheduled without telling my daughter. At that appointment, she sat in the room with us and told my doctor, sweetly, that I'd seemed to be having some memory trouble and had mentioned some things that didn't quite add up. My own physician, hearing this from a caregiver instead of from me, started asking me softer, more careful questions, the kind you ask someone you've started to worry about. I watched my family's faces in that room. Nobody was cruel. That was the terrible part. They were being careful, and their carefulness was aimed entirely at protecting Tara's version of events instead of asking me a single direct question. That night, I called Ellie and asked her to come by Saturday, along with her mother, and, if he could make it, my old friend Frank Delgado, a man who spent 22 years as a licensed private investigator before he retired, and who still consulted for the state licensing board that oversaw home health agencies. "Grandpa," Ellie said carefully, "is this really necessary?" "Just come Saturday," I said, "and ask Tara to be there too. Tell her I have some things to go over with the family. I'd installed a small, clearly labeled camera in my own living room 3 weeks earlier, the same kind of device I'd used professionally for decades, placed in plain view on my bookshelf, disclosed on a sign by my front door, the way the law in my state requires for anyone entering a private residence. I wasn't hiding it. I simply never mentioned exactly what it had already recorded. Saturday afternoon, Frank sat quietly in the corner with a laptop, while Ellie, her mother, and Tara settled into my living room. Tara was smiling the way she always did in front of family, warm, easy, a little too practiced. "Hal wanted us all together," Ellie said, "to talk about some concerns." "I have some concerns of my own," Tara said quickly, glancing at Ellie's mother. "I've noticed some confusion lately, Some things that don't quite match up. Play the 14th, I said to Frank. Frank turned the laptop around. It was dated 11 days earlier, the same day my blood pressure pills came up short. Tara, alone in my kitchen, opening the pill organizer, sliding several tablets into a small bag from her purse, muttering to herself, "He won't even notice. He can barely remember what he had for breakfast." The room went silent. Ellie's mother covered her mouth. Tara's smile hadn't finished leaving her face before the footage started. It just froze there, wrong, while the rest of her went pale. "There's about 6 weeks of this," Frank said quietly. "The agency's compliance office already has a copy. So does the state board." The agency terminated Tara within the week. The state licensing board opened a formal investigation into her conduct, which Frank later told me wasn't her first complaint, just the first one anyone had bothered to document. Ellie came to see me a few days later, quieter than I'd seen her in years. "I believed her over you," she said, "not because I don't love you, because it was easier than imagining someone could do that to you and smile at me the whole time." "I know," I said. "That's exactly what she was counting on." She sits with me every Wednesday now, no agenda, no doctor's forms in her bag. Last week, she asked me, for the first time in her life, what I actually did for 35 years. I told her, all of it this time. People assume that once you're old, your word carries less weight than everyone else's careful, gentle doubt. Sometimes that's true,